A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. With the rise of video and digital entertainment, for many, reading is something that is increasingly pushed to the sidelines. Digital media is entertaining, and much like fast food, it's enjoyable and convenient, but does it do us any good? As a millennial kid, like most, I grew up with a lot of television and video games, which inevitably resulted in reading being something that was forced upon me, rather than something that I did voluntarily, much like eating fruits and vegetables. I think a lot of us probably grew up this way until we began to mature and realize the benefits that good choices bring. For those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Daniel Titchener and I'm an architect and photographer living in London. And in this video, I want to go over 5 books that have had a significant impact on my life and career, and go on to explain why I found them specifically to be so crucial. So first up is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I know that the title of this book screams self-help, but I can't emphasize enough how much this book slapped me across the face and showed me how much there is to learn from reading in general back when I was studying in architecture school. I was blown away by the ideas in this book, and my eyes were opened to a lot of the characteristics that we as human beings have in building relationships and creating influence. One of my favourite quotes from the book is, "You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you." Despite this statement seeming blindingly obvious, it's amazing how little we do this. As human beings, we're wired to be so selfish, but it's amazing how those of us who tend to do the best and those of us who have the most influence are always the ones who think about others first. This book is an absolute goldmine of insightful information, and not just for life in general, but especially in how to conduct yourself in order to progress your career, side hustle, or business. I personally think that it's so good it should be a compulsory read in schools and for anyone starting in adult life. If you haven't read it, look past the cringy title and I promise you that you will not regret it. The next book I'll mention is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I wasn't inclined to read about personal finance until after finishing university, as before that it didn't really occur to me how screwed I was going to be by the debt of higher education. Rich Dad Poor Dad opened my eyes to how certain attitudes can either keep you poor or make you rich. One of the quotes in the book reads, "Most people struggle financially because they do not know the difference between an asset and a liability. Rich people acquire assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets." This was a key takeaway from the book at a time when I didn't understand how deceptive the liabilities that keep people poor are. Even though I'm now a homeowner, it was quite eye-opening to see that homes aren't actually assets despite what we've been taught. They're liabilities. The majority of people think that their home is their greatest asset, but the amount of expenses involved in home ownership make homes an enormous liability. Likewise, the larger the home, the larger the liability. This in part is the reason I choose to live in the smallest and most conveniently located space that I can, but that's a whole other conversation. I'm just going to say, if you haven't read about personal finance before, this book is a great place to start because of its storytelling narrative. The other amazing book that shaped my financial ideals and actually my entire outlook on life and lifestyle is a much lesser known book called Early Retirement Extreme by Jacob Lund Fisker. This book is amazing. I heard about this book after discovering the F.I.R.E movement, and it basically outlines how realistic it actually is to live off incredibly small amounts in order to save money and retire early. I ramble on about minimalism a lot on this channel, but this is really a book that is foundational to the whole idea and lifestyle for me. It's clear from the book that Jacob is obsessive about efficiency, which is something I have an obsession for too. The reason behind this is a desire for freedom from the 9 to 5. A notable quote from the book reads, "Freedom is attained by creating a large gap between production, revenue, and consumption, expenses. This can be done in 2 ways, earning more or spending less." This may seem incredibly obvious to some, but we might not know what this can realistically look like for normal people like me and you. In the book, Jacob breaks down this whole idea into every possible area of life and gives practical advice on how to actually and realistically achieve early retirement. I should make it clear that retirement in this book is not viewed as just quitting your job and luxuriously chipping away at an enormous pile of savings. It's viewed as freedom. Freedom to do with your life whatever you see fit. I think that this is something that we all aspire to, so I'd highly recommend this book, especially if you're into minimalism, as you're gonna love it. This is probably the top of my list and the book which resonates with me the most out of the 5. Following on from this idea of freedom and retirement is Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek. This book is a lot more than just a gimmicky title. Like Early Retirement Extreme, it takes the topic of financial freedom and mainly tackles it from the perspective of time management and entrepreneurship. Tim says in one part of the book, "By working only when you are most effective, life is both more productive and more enjoyable. It's the perfect example of having your cake and eating it too." I really like in this book how Tim is focused on working smarter rather than just showing up and logging hours. I get really bothered with the work culture of going into the office every day to spend half of it chatting at the water cooler with colleagues or wasting time in unnecessary meetings. What this book shows us is, if you can work smarter, you can still produce the same results but in less of the time, freeing you up to do things that you actually care about. If this sounds like you, and especially if you have ambitions outside of your current job, you'll find that this is a really good read. Finally, to wrap things up, is a book I've mentioned on this channel before, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Habit is the thing that can take all of the things we've learned and make them into a reality. This book essentially breaks down how habits give us the shortcuts to do more and become better. If you believe you can change, if you make it a habit, the change becomes real. This is the real power of habit, the insight that your habits are what you choose them to be. Once that choice occurs and becomes automatic, it's not only real, it starts to seem inevitable. To me, this is the process of making our dreams become reality. If we can actively make the choice to form something into a habit, it's very likely we will change for the better. Not only is this book informative, but it's also inspiring and uplifting in providing necessary optimism to bring forth serious life change. I feel that these 5 books, when combined together, really cover some incredible ground in helping you shape the life that you really want. I think it's no coincidence that the most successful people in the world read on a regular and consistent basis. With all of the problems that are going on in the world right now, it's important to educate ourselves so we can prove ourselves and others instead of hindering change. There are also many more books that I found incredibly influential that aren't on this list, so in case you're interested, I've created an extended list down in the description below. Before ending this video, I just want to share a couple of tips that have helped me enormously in building the habit and appetite for reading. I understand that not everyone enjoys reading, and if you haven't read any of the books on this list before, I can imagine that the thought of ploughing through them can seem a mammoth task. So I'd recommend that if something isn't resonating with you, or you feel like a book is repeating something that you already know, feel free to skim ahead or put down the book if you're not getting anything out of it. Don't feel like when you're reading you're obliged to read every little point in detail. Doing this can help you move on faster to books that do actually resonate with you and help bring forth positive change in your life. Another thing is, if you don't like or have the time for the physical activity of reading, you can also listen to audiobooks. I found audiobooks to be incredible for my line of work, as I can listen at double speed whilst I'm drawing to race through books that I wouldn't otherwise have the time for. So if you work in a job or do something where it allows your ears to be free to listen to whatever you want, I'd highly recommend utilising platforms like Audible. If you don't already have an Audible membership, they usually give you your first audiobook for free, so there's no harm in giving it a go. Finally, if audiobooks still seem like too much of a bore, it's amazing that you can actually now watch video classes on platforms like Skillshare. Some of these classes on Skillshare are taught by some of my favourite authors, such as Simon Sinek, Greg McKeown and Gary Vaynerchuk. Skillshare are the kind sponsors of this video, and if you don't know about Skillshare already, they offer an incredible amount of inspiring classes for creative and curious people that are on topics including productivity, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. I recently came across Gary Vaynerchuk's class called Context is Key: Social Media Strategy in a Noisy Online World, which takes a lot of reference from his book, Jab Jab Right Hook. It's interesting to hear his take on how media is shaping the business world around us and how we can appropriately utilize it to further our careers or pursuits. If you're an entrepreneur, freelancer, or someone with a side hustle, I'd recommend to go check this class out, as I think you'll enjoy it as much as I did. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership, so you can explore your creativity and passions. Skillshare is completely free to try, and an annual subscription works out to be less than $10 a month. You may not realise this, but by signing up you actually support my channel, and it's thanks to sponsors like Skillshare that I can continue to dedicate time to making cool videos like this one, which I hope you all enjoy. If you like this video, it would be really helpful to hit the like button below or let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.